It is 1:01 p.m. Aaron, would you do a roll call for us, please?
Yes, we have member Gamble from member Keegan.
Here.
Member Leamy,
Wasn't it?
member Lindemood,
Also present.
member Dewad. Arad, are you online?
I don't see him yet.
Okay, he is absent. Next one is member Rebuffo,
Present.
member Boland,
Here.
member White,
Here.
member Coy,
Here.
member Rudolph,
Here.
member Kohlhaas,
Here.
and member McKenna Foster for member Bath.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Would you also do the public involvement announcement, please?
Yes. Welcome to the AMATS Technical Advice. Public comments are welcome and encouraged with 3 minutes given to each speaker. After the committee discusses each item, members of the public will be invited to comment. A couple of housekeeping items for virtual attendees. Please keep your cameras off unless speaking. For those attending by phone, press *6 to mute or unmute yourself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. The first item is to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion for approving the agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Rudolph, second by member White. Are there any changes that are needed?
I'd like to move that we, I don't know if we can do this, but move informational item 6A up in front of action items number 5, because the content of that's going to help inform probably 5A.
Good thoughts on that, Aaron?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Makes sense.
And so it would still be 6A, it would just happen before 5?
Yeah, I would move before it so that after the minutes are approved, we would immediately go into 6A, finish 6A, and then go back into the 5s.
Sounds good. Okay, so moved by member Lindemood. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Leamy to amend the agenda in that way. Is there any opposed? Okay, hearing none, that amendment has been approved. 6A will happen before the 5s. Any other changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Are there any objections to approving the agenda as amended? Hearing none, the agenda as amended has been approved. Next on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from June 5th, 2025. Do we have a motion? Okay, moved by member Leamy. Second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. White. Are there any changes needed to the minutes? Okay. Are there any objections to approving the June 5th minutes? Okay, hearing none of the June 5th, 2025 minutes are approved. Now let's jump into information item 6A, the high injury network map.
I'll do a quick intro of what it is, and then I'll turn it over to Emily as she has been the lead on this. So as part of the Vision Zero coordination group that's been going on between the municipality of Anchorage, Department of Transportation with AMATS's involvement, there was a kind of a request that came out of that group is to develop kind of a map for everybody to utilize that shows kind of the hotspots around our community for safety. So Emily put this together, and I'll turn it over to her to go ahead and explain through it. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I will. So I think there should be on your iPads the PDF version of this map. There's also printed copies if anybody didn't get one. And then I'm going to share my screen so that we can look at an interactive version if there's any questions that come up. So we thought that we have several programs that are focused on safety and several products showing safety corridors and things like that. So it can be a little confusing about where should I look when I'm planning a project or looking at safety data. So we thought it would be a good idea to combine those. For now, it's a very simple kind of overlay. Where are the locations that are identified by any of these programs? In the future, we'd like to do a more robust analysis as part of the AMATS safety plan, which will be updated in a few years. So for now, we've taken the 2024 AMATS safety plan, the HSIP project list, only the top 10 from Cambridge, the state strategic highway safety plan that also identified corridors users specifically, and then the Vision Zero action plan that the MOA and DOT put together last fall. So we've overlaid those. The safety plan also included some hotspot locations. Those are the red spots on the network maps. And then the orange corridors are also corridors of safety. A little bit different from those, or maybe possibly lower priority from those crash hotspots in red. So we're thinking about this as a tool to use when choosing projects, when scoping projects, also when looking at the annual traffic report and crash data and fatality data, and kind of looking at how are each of these corridors performing. And we'd like to get into a little bit more detail in terms of, I can provide a summary of what types of crashes are happening at various locations. You can see, are they sort of fender benders? Are they fatalities? So this is very much just a start. We've had some review among different agencies so far. And then I think the thought is that AMATS could adopt this as the official AMATS high crash network for now, with an eye towards doing a more robust process as part of the next safety plan. So I think we can take any questions or any discussion.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
Real quick, can you state?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Emily Weiser, and I'm a planner at AMATS and coordinator.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead.
This is Dean Ken Foster for the Planning Department. Emily, is this the full extent of the map? Is there anything further south?
This is the full extent. Yeah, there was nothing identified farther south. Keeping in mind, this is the AMATS area, so we don't go to Kirkwood.
How far south is it through the chair? How far south does it go down?
AMATS area, I think, ends around Potter Marsh.
So that's like, wow. That's 20. I don't know the exact.
It's mile point and post are different, so.
16, I think, 116, 117.
Okay, Member Fox? Yeah.
Could you explain the rationale of the year and the duration period that was chosen?
Yeah, so it varies a little bit across the plans and programs that we combine. For the AMATS safety plan, I know it was 2017 to data set that they used. That was the latest available at the time the plan was developed. And the HSIP list was the most recent list. I don't know what years of data they're using. The SHSP was published, say, 2 years ago. They would have been using data from sometime before that. Yeah, so it is a little variable across the different components.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Is this just vehicle collisions or is this non-motorized and is there overlap? How do we know what type of
Yeah,
that we're looking at safety concern?
that also varied based on the 4 things that we combined. So the AMATS safety plan was all users, all types of crashes, even if it was only property damage. So those red hot spots are for all types of crashes. The HSIP list is also all users, all types of crashes, but they weight the fatalities and serious injuries much more strongly. So they're considering those to be more important. The state strategic highway safety plan, that was only for non-motorized users. I think that was only serious injuries and fatalities. Then the Vision Zero action plan, I think, focused on pedestrian fatalities specifically.
Go ahead.
This came up, I think Bailey's want to ask, just want to confirm that this is an analysis of all the roads regardless of ownership.
Yep, all 4 of those products consider all roads regardless of ownership.
Also, so a quick question. I noticed that this says high crash network, and I've heard this sort of product be called the high injury network before. And that's what the agenda has, so I'm assuming because these other plans didn't necessarily focus on just the fatal and the serious injuries, which is some of what we are now used to focusing on. Is that the reason why it's called the high crash network in this case? And would the vision be that with the next safety plan, it would be focused on the injuries and the high injury, serious injuries and fatalities, and so it might then have the naming convention change to the high injury network, or what's the thought behind naming?
Yeah, I think you've summarized it really well. So yeah, the idea was to form a map of the high injury network. I think that's what at least the group that's been working on this would like. But yeah, the safety plan, since it used all types of crashes, and that was the best data we had to develop the hotspot locations. We are calling it the high crash network, at least for now. But yeah, I think it would be super useful with the next safety plan to distinguish and, do we want to consider property damage for a safety plan? Maybe, maybe not. We can talk about that. We're certainly weighting the fatalities and serious injuries strongly, like the HSIP list does. I think it would be really useful. But that's going to be a much more in-depth kind of a year or two sort of process along with the safety plan, as opposed to something that we could just kind of paste together for now and could still be useful for now.
Sounds good. Other questions or comments from the committee? Yeah, go ahead.
So it's Daniel Foster again. And then I might, and I apologize, I may not understand the boundaries, but planning right now is looking at giving comments on a bigger project, which is maybe partially an AMATS boundary, maybe isn't. The sewer, it's like, said milepost 98 to 120, something like that. So, and the big focus of that project, at least the purpose, is safety. So I'm just wondering would any of that show up on this, or was that outside the boundary? Is any of that inside the boundary? Really just trying to get at, does this data show that that's a hotspot area too, or an area of concern also, or maybe it's outside the boundary? I don't know.
Yeah, that is outside the boundary, except I think for 2 or 3 miles around the Potter Marsh area within the AMATS boundary. So that 2 or 3 mile stretch does not show up as a safety hotspot, but we can't speak to the rest of the corridor for these data.
So thank you.
And we might want to put the boundary, the AMATS boundary on here so
Yeah.
people know kind of the limits and constraints of this map. It might be one of the things we'll do on there to clarify it for everybody.
Yeah, that would be really valuable. Okay, any other questions or comments? This is not an action item, so we're not going to make any actions on it. And we will give the chance for the public to comment. Well, but go ahead, Aaron.
I think the plan is to bring it back next month, to have you guys review it as an action item to potentially adopt it as the AMATS high crash network. Sorry, I'm used to the high injury network. High crash network in the interim between now and the next safety plan update. So there's something that we can work with, and then other people can use this as well if they're interested.
And so maybe with that thought in mind, we don't need to have this conversation now necessarily, but be thinking, is this having an adopted high crash, which might become high injury network, is that something that would be helpful for your organization with the different efforts that you be able to prioritize your actions, to be able to like speak to, why some projects are getting prioritized, and thinking about like the MTP and AMATS, being able to have just some additional scoring criteria around these locations, maybe considering things like if there are urban safety corridors, do they need to draw from this? So anyway, if you can be thinking about those and pass that along so that we know if this should be something that comes back to AMATS to adopt. And, is it valuable for it to be an adopted network that we can refer to? Or is this sufficient like this that we can be able to just refer to the prior plans, the prior safety plan, the prior HSIP, and all the other things that are like already out there showing these locations. So Okay, any other comments from the committee? Do we have any comments from the public? Okay, I don't see any online or in the audience. So thank you, Emily, for your work on this and providing it. Definitely very valuable and I appreciate it. And we'll see how things turn out for next week. So we'll move on now to action item 5A, the AMATS HSIP nominations 25/26. Is that you, Aaron?
We meet. So as you may recall, we held a work session on March 26th of 2025 to discuss HSIP, the Highway Safety Improvement Program with DOT. Anna came and gave wonderful information to us all. And since then, staff has been slowly working on developing HSIP nominations for the 2025 period. I'll be honest, some other things have come up and unfortunately staff has not been able to devote 100% of our time to this. So we are very close to the end of the nomination period. The nomination period closes August 1st. And so we don't have much time. But with that in mind, staff still wanted to bring forward some recommendations for the Technical Advisory Committee to review for the Policy Committee later this month. And the idea would be to possibly get these ready for the 26 nomination period if we don't have enough time to do them for the 25 period. We don't have enough time to do all of them for the 25 period, just as a heads up for you. So I'm going to do a brief walkthrough of each of the nominations and kind of what the thought process was behind there. So the first three are 36th Avenue. The reason 36th Avenue is being looked at is currently ranks number 10 on the HSIP high injury network list that we were given as part of the work session we had back in March. When you go through the other 9 roads that are on there, you know, Tudor, Ingra, Gamble, 5th, 6th, those are being looked at through other efforts. DeBar as well. I think we have an analysis to do for DeBar, and we already kind of nominated a project for DeBar. So when you look through the list, almost everything is already being looked at. Muldoon is on there, and I'm correct if I'm wrong, but I think the state is looking at a speed study for Muldoon and Tudor. So it has something going on, but there's no active project underway other than possibly a pavement project coming along in the future. So when staff looked at that list of the 10 spots, which are all in Anchorage, 36 was one of the ones that was not currently underway with anything. So staff met with the municipality of Anchorage and DOT staff to review these, and these are the recommendations that came out of it. The first, and we split them into 3 separate nominations for 36 because it's not really realistic to do the entire length of 36 as one project. And they may have different needs depending upon what's in the adjacent land use. The first recommendation is Spinard to C Street, road diet, converting the roadway from 5 to 3 lanes. So 2 travel lanes, 1 in each direction with center turn pockets. There already exist center turn pockets in portions of this location here. The portion where it doesn't exist is in the portion from Spinard to Arctic. Would you guys like me to pop up on a map to show you the locations as we're walking through them, or are you good? Okay, great. Next location is 36th Avenue, C Street to Latouche, looking at a road diet from 5 to 3 lanes. So similar, some kind of center turn pocket, center to-be left turn lane. That would all have to be kind of looked at, but the idea is to reduce it down to 1 lane in each direction with some kind of center treatment. This would have to be coordinated closely with the 36th Avenue interchange project. The 36th Avenue interchange project does show a significant number of vehicles anticipated for the end of the period for that one. I think it's 25,000 vehicles on 36th Avenue in parts of this location. So there need to be discussion on what that looks like. Next part of 36 is the eastern part, the last little bit, Latouche to Lake Otis. And this does include the through the Lake Otis intersection. We have been discovering there are issues when we just stop at an intersection, and it's recognized that sometimes we may need to go through to help with any of the tapering or carrying bike lanes through intersections, for example. So the idea here is to do the entire length of 36 over time and road diet. Next one is Tudor and McInnes. traffic signal or other crossing work. I put traffic signal because that was just what popped into the staff's head, but it could be really anything, and we can refine that and leave it more generic to give the project an opportunity to look at different crossing treatments. But the idea here is, we had a fatality in that location recently. I believe that the community has been asking for something in this location for many years. Fire has a station there. The fire department has a station there, and they've asked for some kind of signal in this location to help them get in and out. It's also a pretty important area if you want to do non-motorized connectivity for access to the trails. So this is something to look at. Obviously, it would have to be safety related, but there are a lot of needs in this area. Tudor and Wright, this is another area that is identified as an important area. I believe it's on our high crash network. That's one of the reasons why we selected it. If you look at the HSIP list, Tudor is one of the top ones for needing some work done, but it didn't go into too much detail about the locations. Our safety plan helped us kind of identify strategic locations. Tudor and Wright and Tudor and Dale were those locations. So the recommendation here is some kind of crossing work. We don't know what it is. I think Tudor and Dale had a signal at one point and was moved to Piper because of the distances between the signals that exist out there. So staff is not necessarily recommending a traffic signal, but to look at some kind of options in this area. This would perfectly line up with AMATS's Dale project that we have underway with Dale and Folker to make some improvements to Dale. And then last is Minnesota Hawk Signal near the 32nd, 33rd Avenue. This came up as part of the discussion for the Minnesota non-motorized pavement. I will recognize staff shouldn't have probably called it a Hawk Signal only. We should have also made it a little more generic and said some kind of crossing improvements in this area. Hawk Signal may or may not work depending upon the analysis that has to be done. So staff recommends changing that one from saying Hawk Signal specifically to some kind of crossing improvements between Benson and Spenard. So these are before you for discussion. Hopefully that gave you enough information to see where kind of staff is coming from in here. And again, the recommendation is to review these and recommend approval of them to the policy committee. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Any questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, member.
Daniel Kenneth Foster, Planning Department. I was reading and I might have misheard you. Did you say something about 25,000 vehicles on 36? Because I'm looking at the daily traffic and I don't see anywhere above like 14,000.
Yeah, these are the estimated projections from the 36th Avenue interchange project. I believe it's in the DSR that was submitted to the municipality of Anchorage recently, where they outlined what the projected traffic numbers are anticipated to be. And I believe for 36 at the interchange and just a little on the side, I don't know how far down 36 goes, but around the interchange area, it's about 25,000 vehicles for AADT.
In what year did that be?
I think it's the end horizon year, so probably 20 years from now.
The recognizing that 36 sort of is three separate contexts. Is the road diet that's proposed actually in a mini planning document somewhere, or is that just an idea to deal with the situation that's there? Meaning that as they move forward with this, they're going to look at all the options and so forth, or they pretty much decided.
I think because it's an HSIP nomination, we have to provide the recommendation and then justify the data. So I don't know if they look at every single possible option under the sun, or if they take the recommendation provided by the committees and say, is there justification or data to back up this recommendation? I don't know if Anna can help clarify what the limits are for HSIP nominations or not, if they have to look at every option like a full-blown regular project or not. The answer is no, they don't. So it would be based on what we nominate as AMATS.
So just to be clear, if we nominate it, it would then go through the process of getting scored and compared and prioritized and, justification of it being something that would address kind of a data-driven process. And then if it did make it onto the list, then it'd be moving forward with those treatments versus some of our other design projects that come up with alternatives and go through a coordination and community outreach. And, you know, I mean, there would be community outreach, but it wouldn't be like alternatives analysis quite like other projects that.
That's my understanding, yes. I think if you have the data to demonstrate that this is the countermeasure that needs to be implemented to help address the safety concerns in the area, that's what's moved forward with. They do the public outreach as part of that process. But basically what this is asking is, should staff move forward with these and then start gathering the data to determine if they're viable, if they can be done as part of HSIP, and then submit them as nominations to be scored and ranked as part of the process.
Got some concerns over the 36th Avenue stuff. I mean, you go to the Spinard end of 36th Avenue with all the work Cooking on Housing's doing over there and so forth, and really kind of converting that into more of a lot more housing units and stuff like that. I can see that making sense. But as we start moving east from there, 36th Avenue is the primary corridor between A and C Street and the highway. It also, as you move east from the highway, it's the primary emergency route between emergency vehicles coming from south of town towards Providence. And my concern is if we're predetermining what these answers are, but we haven't really looked at what the result's going to be on the network overall by trying to squeeze that traffic out or slow it down to somewhere else, how that's going to impact things. Just concern. I'm not a traffic guy, I'm a train guy, but driving through there every day for the last God knows how long. Just an observation.
I will say one of the things we are working on as staff is a analysis of lane reduction modeling throughout the community, and 36th Avenue is part of that.
Okay.
So we're doing a model run to determine what would our community look like if we did a lot of lane reduction on kind of the roads that exist today, and you know, would the system break, or would there be things we'd have to pull back on and be like, we can do it here, but we can't do it here. So that might help inform that decision as well.
Would we be getting in front of ourselves by moving forward with this now without that model done?
If these are for the 26 nomination period, no. That modeling work should be done before the end of this year. We hope in the next couple of months, but Leafy is using it as a training opportunity, so we're going to take as much time as we need. And so we're hoping to get it done in the next few months, and that would give us at least some data to inform the HSIP nominations.
So if we go forward with this and say we're going to do a lane reduction as far as the HSIP thing, that's the scope of whatever it is. You go through your analysis, you find out that it breaks or something somewhere. Do we have the ability to pivot into some other solution that is a diet, or is it just die at that point and then start over?
I would have to ask Anna Boson with DOT that question.
So yeah, Anna Boson, Central Region Traffic Safety Engineer. So what we're doing with HSIP projects right now is coordinating the scoping to be with crash modification factors to have them be ranked projects. The scope of them can be as broad as allowed within the crash modification factor criteria that are included. So sometimes you can adjust widths, you can adjust termini a little bit here and there. You can adjust kind of the visual to a certain degree. And then I will say that the headquarters of DOT is developing a policy and procedure regarding lane reallocations right now, and they are going to have some metrics included in that as well. And then we are going to be working closely with the new MTP modeling to show that as well. So what I would recommend for the 36th discussion is to incorporate the latest policies, modeling, et cetera, to work on a nomination this next year and maybe come back to the technical advisory committee for those to provide maybe more feedback on how all of those different metrics have come together for the next cycle of nominations, because there is a lot of discussion about lane reallocations going on right now.
I will say we do actually have a project in the 2050 MTP that was modeled for 36th Avenue from Spinard to Lake Otis. rehabilitate to remove a vehicle lane, install a separated bike lane through intersections, widen sidewalks, and slow speeds to 30 miles an hour. So we've already kind of done modeling to determine the impact that a lane reduction would have on 36 for the system. The system.
So that project in the MTP, was it a long range project? Was it
It's a long-range project, yes.
Okay, are there other questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, Linda.
I guess when I first saw this, I was interested to know why we had the segments, but it had to do with different contexts. Interacting with my group, we felt that the west side, closer to the Spinard segment, had more clarity than the other side, given the 36 interchange project underway. I just want to make sure that there's a more comprehensive look across a corridor, and maybe there's an opportunity to do a corridor study on the last two from C Street to Lake Otis. And then, maybe there's more clarity on the first segment to push that through and move forward with the nomination. But I also had wondered, are we looking at it? I just don't want to have something where we study one segment, we feel like we get it right, and then not understand the network movement throughout as we work towards the next, whether we're working on them simultaneously, maybe that could bridge that understanding, but nonetheless, when PM&E works on a project, for example, 32nd, 33rd Avenue, 2-mile corridor through Midtown, what we did with our consultant is looked at the entire corridor kind of in the design study phase. We designed it to a 65% level for the entire corridor. So we had more understanding how it would interplay throughout that length. And then we were able to confidently phase it into fundable phases. So it gave me some reason to want to know, should we have a little bit more studying going on?
Okay, thank you, Linda. Go ahead, Daniel.
Just speaking for the director, the planning department's preference is to focus on the 36th Avenue. Their support of that in the Spinard corridor plan talks about improving corridors and connectivity on 36th. The upcoming Midtown plan talks about rehabilitate 36th Avenue to include lower design speed. So some of the plan, and that's not adopted yet, so that's not the plan, but that's going through that process. So there's a lot of planning projects about that, and also prioritizing that Hawk crossing, whatever the crossing might be. The preference would be Minnesota. So from planning's perspective, 36 and the Minnesota would be key in terms of the stuff we see in the documents and the policy guides we have.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Ken.
Aaron, I would be supportive of on the Minnesota, because we do have our Minnesota corridor plan currently underway, and there will probably be a recommendation of some kind between Seward and Benson. I think if we could loosen that up a little bit, make it a little more flexible, because by the time we get ready to submit the nomination, we'll have recommendations coming out of that plan for that. And I think just getting a little more flexible in our language, I would support that.
Instead of using the term hawk,
Yeah.
use a pedestrian crossing beacon or something, or signal.
And then change it to not just be 32nd, 33rd, but kind of the Benson to Spinard location somewhere in there.
Somewhere in that segment, there's more than likely gonna be some recommendation to fix pedestrian crossings.
And yeah, if we are doing this for 26, the Minnesota study or plan should be done by then. So we'll be able to see what they recommend and we can incorporate that in, or we can use that as part of the information for the nomination.
Yep.
Okay, other questions or comments?
Just a couple comments on the Tudor nomination. So we've got a good amount going on there on Tudor. We've got a pavement preservation project that's just kicking off. Maybe an ability to align any of those three options with that pavement preservation for bundling and more efficiency during construction there. And then like Aaron brought up, we've got the project on Dale too. So we can work to make sure that's consistent with any improvements there on Dale Street. Also, we have a corridor plan on Tudor that's kicking off too, and hopefully some recommendations on some longer term solutions there along the Tudor corridor that couldn't be incorporated into a pavement preservation project. So,
if there's an HSIP project, it can dovetail with and help partially fund, or have those other projects like do those? Is it helpful to have it be an HSIP nomination? Or?
It would help it to be an HSIP nomination, but we could bid them together for more efficiency there. And I think try and push both those projects, the pavement preservation and the HSIP, to get out as soon as we can.
And so it could bring the additional funding to it, not use the pavement funding to pay for it. It'd be two separate things combined. And we just want to make sure it's clear, because we always get asked for additional work as part of pavement. Like, why are you doing with this project? Because of how the funding works. So.
And not necessarily a requirement either.
Yeah.
I would add is just an opportunity there. Usually we see lower bid prices when we can combine multiple projects within one solicitation there.
Yeah, a pavement project that doesn't address some of those locations also can leave some to be desired from both community members and others interested in improvements and crossing improvements at those locations. Because I will add that each of those locations along Tudor actually has legal unmarked crosswalks. So if a pedestrian is crossing Tudor at any of those locations, vehicles are actually legally required to stop to them because they are unmarked crosswalks. So anyway, I can talk a little bit more about that if you have questions, but to do an interview with KTUU a couple of days ago talking about just this understanding of what's a legal crossing in each of these locations. Pedestrians do have that legal crossing unmarked. So yeah, trying to figure those out. So those are some of the ones that I would also say are key priorities to figure out how to improve the crossing safety at Tudor, McInnes, and Wright and Dale. I think especially the top two, McInnes and Wright. And then as I think about 36th Avenue, the furthest west over by Spenard, I am interested in how that interplays with the improvements at Spenard, because if it could dovetail with and allow that intersection of 36 and Spenard to not be so big, then there's definitely benefit in my mind that, let's not reconstruct that intersection with a 5-lane 36th Avenue if we can construct it with a 3-lane. So I'm not sure how all that interplays with how far along the Spenard project is, but that is, I guess, my initial thought. Maybe the timing is important to get the east side of Spenard, or the west side of Spenard, like west side of 36th Avenue, kind of into the process so that we could bring additional money and actually have it happen in conjunction with another project. And then I like the Tudor, Wright, and Dale, I guess coupling them with current projects just has a lot of benefit. And I guess I see quite a few of these doing that. So go ahead, Melinda.
Is the first segment, is that MOA right away? Is that our jurisdiction?
On 36?
Yeah.
The entire
36?
36 is
The
ours.
entire 36. Okay. Couple questions I still have. If we go the route with the HSIP and we want the complete street goals, is the HSIP mechanism able to fund all of our complete street goals, or are there limitations to that? And I guess the other thing is, if I can still bring in other funding, kind of like what Luke was mentioning, Mr. Bowman was mentioning, maybe that's not an issue, but I just want to make sure if we go one route, that it doesn't eliminate an opportunity where if we want to have safety items addressed, but also is what the community wants as far as a complete street project too. Maybe there's other things that they wouldn't be getting. I'm just asking the question.
Sure. So Anna Boson, again, I would say that, again, if it's tied to the crash modification factor of the treatment, for instance, median crossing, raised medians or channelizing vehicles adding sidewalk, widening, lighting, those kind of things could be elements that might meet your complete streets policy. Things like landscaping, those are more of a challenge for HSIP to cover.
Okay,
So, or other amenities, trash cans, or, you know, I'm trying to think of street furniture, for instance, might be difficult to meet, but we can certainly look at what elements are eligible, like the color of the concrete might not be an issue, but so there's some wiggle room, but it is kind of a bare bones type of approach
yeah.
to really addressing the safety need over the visual.
Mhm. Follow-on question, because there's a different match versus like STBG grants, for example. Is it indeed a 50% match for local government?
So it sounds like it's 50% of the 10%.
Okay, thank you. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So, yeah.
Thank
so
you for clarifying that.
It's still, the HSIP program is still overall 90.5% match. And so it's that remaining 10%, then we would split.
Okay. Thank you, Anna.
And if I could add a couple of things after hearing some of your discussions on the other ones, 36th Avenue between Arctic and C was actually funded with HSIP to widen it. So that was nominated, I believe, around 2000. And so to go to the previous discussion, was there a look at the corridor analysis then to widen it? No. So and it was to target rear end crashes that were happening, and so it was very specific in targeting certain types of crashes and didn't look at maybe the downstream effects of that necessarily. So sometimes when we get, you know, so focused in on one type of crash, there might be other things that are not considered, like the network part of it. So I bring that up, and then we have another list that's was not included in this map that the region has created. So this is not a document that headquarters creates, but it's more of a system analysis for unsignalized intersections, and how they're working both on a capacity and on a crash factor. And so of all the unsignalized intersections that are looked at, Tudor and Wright is number 2 listed here because of fatal crashes that have happened there, and of serious injury crash. And then number 10 on this list is Dale Street and Tudor. Number 25 on this list is Tudor and McInnes. And then still on Tudor, number 30 is Folker. So even though that's not on your nomination list, just knowing what's going on in the corridor, those unsignalized intersections, those unmarked crosswalks, those crossings are still showing up in other fashion of analysis that we're doing.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, just one quick question more for information. I mean, thinking from planning, sometimes a lot of these changes would make stuff along the roadside considerably more attractive for them. So I'm just wondering if these go in, how likely would we see how soon would we see it on the ground? And just in terms of the long-term, I guess, sort of financial health of this program, we expect that it's gonna, can we expect to see these things happen? I guess I don't know if that's a question for AMATS or DOT, but
Probably Anna.
Yeah, so Anna, again, I would say that it depends on the funding plan that's put forward from headquarters. So if Central Region nominates these and they are ranked projects, which means that they have a crash benefit factor for the treatments that's selected, those get funded and selected first from a priority perspective. If we tie them to other pavement preservation projects, that helps to get them delivered faster. The previous example I shared with you on 36th Avenue, it was nominated in early 2000, 2002 maybe. It didn't get constructed for another 15 years. So it can, if it's not a priority, it's kind of like we have to keep on it from kind of the overall planning of the program. So it's not an easy answer to give you, but I think tying it to other projects that will help it from the cost and economy and priority.
Go ahead, Melinda.
You did mention the MTP 2050 that Spinard or 36th Avenue from Spinard to Latouche is included. Could you
Spinard to Lakes.
Spinard to Lake
The whole thing.
Spinard to Lake Otis?
Yep.
Could you maybe comment on how the HSIP opportunities to play with looking for a future AMATS project?
Well, the HSIP funding is available now. The funding for a long-term MTP project is not available now.
Okay.
So those are kind of the options. It's, do you want something on the road now to help address the safety concerns, or do you want to wait until eventually a 36 project comes through? Now, the policy committee can always make it happen because it's their job. They can say, we want this as a priority now. But there are a lot of other needs that exist in the community. So
Yeah.
that's a big ask.
Okay.
And this is based on data that we see. And with 36, at least, being so high on the list of the overall corridor network, that's why staff felt, let's do it now.
Thank you.
So as we look at the high crash network, Bernard Road, or not Bernard, 36th Avenue is actually, the entire section is on that, not a hotspot, but it's on that. The Tudor and Minnesota ones are actually hotspots on it. So these all, like, you know, just thinking about that network and how that might inform, it does kind of suggest prioritization of the Tudor and Minnesota ones. Not to say that 36 shouldn't be also pursued as an opportunity. But just some thoughts about that network. Are there other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, let's move to comments from the public. Are there any members of the public who'd like to comment? Either online or in person? Okay, go ahead, James.
Yeah, James Project DOT planning. All 7 of these projects, in my professional opinion, have merit. But I think it would be helpful as a planning guidance and also for the policy committee if the TAC considered which of these projects would they prioritize. Staff has already talked about how they have a very short turnaround to get have these nominations in. They only have so much time to do the analysis. So it's just my thought that I'd like to convey to y'all is to perhaps think about, are there 1, 2, 3 of these projects that you would say they should be focused on instead of just throwing all 7 at them and say, figure out how you're going to prioritize that. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Are there other members of the public who'd like to comment? Okay.
Hello, yeah,
That
yeah.
green, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, Alexa Dobson with Bike Anchorage. I want to express strong support for the projects that are listed here and really appreciate prioritizing areas that have been sites of pedestrian fatalities recently. It's really great to see, decisive action being taken to actually make our streets safer in this way. Particularly very excited to see the road diet along 36th Avenue. That is a really important corridor for east-west connectivity in an area that is otherwise really not very accessible for non-motorized transportation, walking, biking, and transit. with access to grocery stores, to the university and hospitals, to the library, to parks. Like, this really should be an area that is very walkable and is very bikeable and is currently, frankly, pretty hostile to anyone who's not inside a vehicle. I do think that the objection raised earlier about the traffic numbers, I think, is an important piece to look a little bit more into. You know, having looked at the traffic data from most of the corridors in that region, we see that those numbers are declining. So the idea that they're going to nearly double because of an interchange project strikes me as pretty absurd. So with traffic numbers the way they are, you know, this road diet really does make sense. We also heard about emergency vehicles being a concern, and I do want to reiterate that, you know, road diets, being a Federal Highway Administration endorsed proven safety countermeasure, have been implemented all over the country, and we have extensive examples of ways that those can be implemented in ways that still permit access for emergency vehicles. So I really hope that we don't use that as an excuse to delay or obstruct a really important and necessary safety improvement for this corridor. We're also, you know, I think that moving forward on Minnesota is a particularly important one. Having additional crossings within that area, especially considering the anti-pedestrian barrier that's just a block over, I think would be a really helpful corrective step. And finally, I recognize that we can't necessarily be adding more projects at this point, but I do really want to highlight that the double left turns on C Street at Benson are emerging as a particularly significant safety hazard that I really hope we will see prioritized as soon as possible. That is an area where people are continuing to be, you know, struck by cars and killed, even when they have the right of way and are crossing, you know, doing everything right. So that's a really important area as well. I hope to see that really prioritized in future projects. And I do also hope that we see these projects, as they move forward, implemented with all possible haste. It really is a crisis, you know, the safety situation for bicyclists and pedestrians in our city right now. So yeah, big thanks to the team for putting these together. We think they're great, and we really hope that these can be constructed soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. Appreciate it. Are there other comments from the public? Okay. Perfect. So as we move into the discussions, I did have a quick question for James. With the Minnesota project coming on, would a 2025 nomination versus 2026 nomination make a difference for Minnesota at where that process is, in your opinion?
Yeah, James started at DOT. I don't think so, because by the time the funding is obligated, staff is assigned, the design work begins, the environmental process begins. I think that will take us beyond when we expect to have a plan finalized, and so that they will be able to. So I don't think 25 or 26 would matter. The only caveat there being plan is scheduled right now for finalization in December, January timeframe. If that slips for any reason, then perhaps it would have some impact.
Yeah, but
The 26 would be better because that's for the construction design. We're talking about the nomination itself, and we would use the plan to influence or to input into the nomination itself, which has to be done by October 1st of this year. So I don't believe the plan is going to be done in the next 3 weeks. So we would need it to be a 26, really, is our recommendation to staff.
and then for Tudor, is there a difference if it was a 2025 versus 2026 nomination for McInnes, Wright, Dell?
Since we're kicking off that pavement preservation project, ideally, we would be kicking off these Tudor projects now so they can catch up with it. We still have to go through a tip cycle, amendment cycle to get these things kicked off. So I think if you push this into 26, we lose the ability likely to pair it with the pavement preservation project, or it makes it that much tougher, or one of them's waiting for the other one more so than might already be.
And then how about 36th Avenue interchange area?
I think that one, kind of going back to what Anna was saying, there may be some benefits to studying that a little bit more, looking more into those previous nominations. But not tied to any specific project there along 36. So.
Go ahead, Anna.
Sorry, thank you. Anna Boson. I will say that the state funded study for the interchange, right? They are looking at some 36th Avenue small section underneath there as part of that project. But yeah, it wouldn't cover enough, I think, of what I'm seeing as the goal of this project.
And so given that that's an interchange project, not necessarily a pavement preservation, which moves faster, there might be more opportunity to like explore it and a little bit more time.
Yeah, and to speak more to that interchange project, it's state funded right now. It is in TIP Amendment 3, as I understand it. So without the federal piece, a project of that magnitude doesn't have a whole lot of priority. So that getting federal funding here moving forward kind of moves that forward. But that's going to be a massive project with utility relocation right away. I do see a lot of benefits with that project of making some connections there along 36, especially for pedestrians navigating through 36. Then and Seward right now is a challenge there. So we would have the opportunity to try and make sure that whatever is being done under an HSIP 36 project would interconnect with whatever we're doing there in terms of an interchange improvement.
Okay, sounds good. Are there any other questions or comments, or should we move into what is the will of the committee?
I have.
Okay, go ahead, Melinda.
What is the planning opportunity that's not going to draw it out too long? If we were to look at 36th Avenue, would it be a corridor study, or is it an HSIP study that happens that can look at it comprehensively with those two segments to the east?
I mean, a corridor plan, you have to get the funding for, you have to put the funding in the, you have to get it in the tip, basically, because nobody funds it otherwise. And then you have to actually do it. We have 4 corridor plans that are either started or about to start, or other roads. So adding a 5th on top of that ahead of others that have already asked for, it's not going to be done in the next 3 to 4 years. I'll be honest, unless somebody wants to bring other funding to the table and use non-federal. So that's kind of an issue we're running into, is it's we have a lot of needs piling up and we're trying to chip away at them, but it just takes a while.
So instead of putting it into that realm, just having maybe another cycle and hitting it in a future HSIP nomination, maybe give a more study time.
And if I could, comment to that. So the process that we followed for Mountain View Drive nomination was maybe more of an ad hoc kind of working with staff, going to the field, doing more of like a vulnerable road user assessment of the corridor, walking it, taking notes, compiling that nomination collectively in order to get that approved. So I would see that most likely being the most reasonable. Our program doesn't do any more corridor type analysis or planning. We're doing more system-wide analysis and then recommending spot treatments.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
On a second.
Okay, I guess we're still
We're closed.
Did we close public
Yeah.
comment?
We're done with public comment, unfortunately, at this point. So we are now with committees or if there any questions from staff.
Okay. Sounds good. Could I ask a question of anyone in the audience?
Technically, we really need to move into a motion at this point, and then additional questions can be asked or discussion had.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
To discuss that item. What is the will of the committee on this?
Move to recommend following list of nominations to the policy committee for approval, prioritizing tutor nominations for 25 nominations. And I guess I'll probably leave it at that. Yeah, give that a shot. See what folks think.
Okay, motion by Mr. Boland. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Rudolph. Any discussion about that?
I guess I was going to throw out, in terms of timing, I see the biggest benefit of having Tudor moving forward first, again, for combining that with the pavement preservation project. Also with some of the data that we're collecting, not only the crash. See, I got the injury things too in my mind, the crash map, but then also our unsignalized intersection rankings as well, kind of supporting the Tudor nominations over the other projects listed. Not to say that we shouldn't be moving forward with looking at 36th, and then sounds like the timing is going to work out better on the Minnesota crossing location with the corridor, Minnesota INL corridor plan being completed there. So probably a better 26 nomination with that information finalized in it.
Sounds good. Go ahead, Daniel.
I wonder, and I don't want to get into some procedural thing, is if we could make it so that recommend the projects that would align with other projects. Kind of like what we talked about, where it's nice when we can combine the things. So maybe that could speak to some of the Tudor stuff. But if something up comes up, it gives the recommendation a little bit more flexibility. So when someone's making a decision, they can go based on other stuff that's happening. I'll just say again, because our preference would be the 36th and the hawk signals on Minnesota, but again, if Tudor's coming first, that does make more sense to do it. So I don't know if there's a way to do that, or how this recommendation goes forward, if the policy committee or whoever can be empowered to make that decision based on what makes the most sense in terms of aligning projects.
So are you recommending an amendment to the motion that there be consideration for current projects and have that language in the recommendation? Or do you just want staff to, and I mean, anything that we're talking about now, staff can also just let the policy committee know this was part of the conversation?
I guess I'd recommend as a friendly amendment, just if that could give everybody a little bit more flexibility, so nobody's tied to doing one or the other. If something comes up, then you can go with the projects that are working, that seem like most likely to go forward. But if staff could just explain that we had a conversation, I think that would work too, but just to allow some flexibility, so.
I mean, I guess part of the question is an amendment of 2025 has to be done like in 3 weeks. So if we're not gonna learn anything new in the next 3 weeks, the motion actually still allows 36 and the other things to be kind of folded into 2026, because that's not as time critical.
That makes sense. And I'll just leave my comments.
Other committee comments on this? Can I-
There
Go ahead,
an
Linda.
opportunity to amend or one.
Yeah, we can amend the motion. Now's the time to amend before we vote on the motion.
I mean, I move to make an amendment to add the first segment of 36 Avenue, Spinard Road to C Street, and then the Minnesota crossing improvement as well,
For
for
2020,
inclusion for 2025 nomination.
I'll second that.
seconded by Mr. Lindemood. Any conversation on those ones?
The 36th Avenue, we do have the Spinard Road AMATS project underway. And as traffic engineering and PM&E have been interested to see how that could tie back into Spinard Road corridor, it would be interesting to have that project start. It does show that it does have high injury occurrences in the network. Also with the Minnesota crossing, knowing that that corridor study is coming to a completion and it would tie well with it and that work could start becoming underway.
Sounds good. One thing to comment on is we did ask James, and it's on his opinion, waiting to 2026 is totally fine with the Minnesota.
Okay.
And
Oh,
aligns with it because then we can refer to the study. You know,
okay.
it's not going to necessarily like make or break that happening because the timing wise.
Mhm.
And AMATS, do you have capacity to do 5 nominations?
No.
So,
Okay,
So if there, my recommendation, Minnesota wait to 26.
okay,
We'll see what we can do with the Spinard at 36 because the Spinard project, we'll do the tutor ones first and see if we have the time
Okay.
to do that would be my recommendation.
I will amend my amendment
okay,
to, so I move to amend the motion to add 36 Avenue Spinard Road to C Street for a recommendation to the policy committee for inclusion for an HSIP nomination
125
for 2025,
and not the other one?
depending on staff capability and availability,
Okay, and
always
do you
capable.
second that change?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so is there any opposed to that motion? If so, we can do a roll call. If not, we'll just count it amended. Any opposition to that amendment to add to the motion? Okay, hearing none, then that amendment is, that motion is amended. So right now, the motion before us is to recommend to the policy committee the 3 tutor locations as 2025 with, if staff has additional capacity, to do the Spinard or the 36 Spinard to C Street as well in 2025. That accurately account for what we
Yeah.
all understand? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or amendments to this motion? Okay, hearing none, are we ready to vote on it? Let's, I guess, vote on it. Are there any opposed to the motion?
As amended.
As amended. Okay, hearing none, that motion is approved. So thank you everyone for that robust conversation. You have what you need on that, Aaron?
Yeah,
So, okay,
that will provide a recommendation to the PC to change the Minnesota one to a hawk signal to be something else. So I know you guys didn't vote on that, but we'll recommend it and say we discussed it.
okay, that was discussed. Thanks. Yeah, you I think we got the most important parts.
I think if it moved to 26, we had time to change it if we needed to.
Just, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, everyone. Let's move to item 5B, the CAC District 3 member appointment. Is that yours, Aaron?
I'm filling in since Christine Schutte is not here. She's enjoying a July 4th time off, so I'll do my best. Hopefully I get it right. So we have a position open on the Community Advisory Committee, the District 3 seat. It has been open for a little while, but since we took a break from all of our subcommittees, since it was just Christine and I for a little while, we've started everything back up, and that includes refilling the empty seats where we have them. So we have 2 applications, Ali Hartman and Evan Leaf. Evan Leaf submitted his application in before we took the break, so a little over a year and a half ago. Because it was in the system, we felt it appropriate to still bring it forward to you all for discussion. Staff reviewed the applications and are recommending Ali Hartman, who is currently the Assembly Communications Director. It seems like based on her information, she's passionate about transportation alternatives and uses multiple modes of transportation to get around town. So based on what was submitted to us as staff, we're recommending Ali Hartman. She is here today in the audience if you have any questions for her, and this will be a recommendation that goes to the policy committee, depending on what you decide. That's all we have. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, any comments from the public? You want to say anything, Ali?
I'll introduce myself. Hello, everyone. Through the chair, and for the record, my name is Ali Hartman. Really happy to be here today. I'm typically tuning in on Teams, so it's great to be here in space with you all. And thanks for recommending me to move forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Ali. Thanks for being here.
There's a comment.
Okay, comment online. Go ahead, Alexa.
Hi, Alexa Dobson, Bike Anchorage. I'll just make a really quick comment. Allie is fantastic and she would make a great member of this committee. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexa. Any other comments from the public? Okay, seeing none in the room or online, what is the will of the committee?
I'll move to recommend to the policy committee to appoint Ali Hartman to this, what's the name of the committee? Community Advisory Committee.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Rudolph, seconded by Mr. Buffo. Any conversation on the item? Are there any opposed to approving the motion? Okay, hearing none opposed, the item is approved, the motion is approved. And we'll have that one go to the policy committee too. So thank you all for being here. Let's move to item 5C, the DOT&PF use of MPO funding agreement.
Yes.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Hello, everybody. So this will be a complicated topic, so just kind of bear with me as best you can. So I received a request from the Department of Transportation for something that we routinely kind of do on a year-to-year basis if the need arises. But it's a little different this go around, so I want to kind of walk you through it. So what is being asked here is to use some of AMATS funding on a DOT&PF project, specifically the DeArmond Road Pavement Preservation Project. The reason is because the AMATS funding is pretty restrictive. It can only be used within our MPO boundary. And so we currently have, I think, about 57 million-ish of unobligated funds of AMATS just kind of sitting there waiting to be obligated. And part of this request is to utilize some of AMATS's funds on this project, and then at a later date, supplement AMATS with DOT's funding. So basically, we give 5.3 million, which is asked here, and then DOT will give us 5.3 million for us to use. So we're made whole in the end. It's basically a funding code switch, pretty simple. What's a little different this go around is there's a desire to have an actual kind of formal agreement between the parties that says, here's how much you were giving us, and here's how much we're giving you, and here's when you get it. So it's easy for us to keep track of everything, as well as having a memo that you see that's been posted here that kind of explains what the process is for everything. The reason, one of the big benefits for doing this is August redistribution is really dependent upon the state getting their federal funds obligated for the specific pots of funding that are available. AMATS's funding, the 200,000 or over 200,000 population pot, is very restrictive. It's for us to use and currently has a lot of money unobligated in there. So it's kind of a, hey, you need to get this obligated. So think of it like this is for every dollar that is obligated of AMATS funding in a year, that much is available for the state to ask in August redistribution funding at the end of the year, granted, as long as they meet all the other requirements that are part of that August redistribution. So if AMATS agrees to this swap of funding, it would mean that the state has at least $5.3 million they can ask for August redistribution this year. Now there's a risk, I'll be honest. The agreement that is here, there's no binding legal aspect of this agreement. It's basically a handshake between the parties that this is what we're going to do. So if the state turns around and says, you know what, we don't actually have 5.3 million available for you at a future date after we say this is okay to do, well, then we have to kind of take care of that ourselves through any methods that we have as AMATS. There's no real cure for us to be like, oh, you didn't give us the 5.3 million you said, we're going to take you to court or something like that. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're reading through this. Well, can you switch over to the agreement itself, please? Okay, so here is the sub-allocation funding agreement. Kind of goes through what the purpose is, what the scope of this is. It goes through the funding. If you keep scrolling down, it'll show the funding amounts. So it lists in here that AMATS is agreeing, or the parties are agreeing that 5.3 million of the AMATS STBG, our allocation, will be obligated in FY25 for this particular project. And then DOT will provide the same amount of funding to us in STBG no later than October 1st, 2025. Now, the reason for that October 1st, 2025 date is because we need to ensure that we're going to remain fiscally constrained as part of this. So we need to make sure we have the funding available in FY26 so we can adjust the tip to swap the fund codes. It's an admin mod that we can do. It's pretty easy to do, but we need to make sure that the money is there and available for us. So when we do the swap, we're still able to verify we're fiscally constrained. Look, if you can go to the next document, please. Okay, so this is a memo that was provided to us by DOT that kind of outlines the purpose, the scope, everything here. And it goes through the process steps of, how they coordinate on this, who they talk about, that we have this agreement between the two parties, that they send it to the federal aid program manager, coordination with FHWA. So FHWA is aware of this going on. So everybody is informed of the process, exactly how a 3C process should be. So I love it. There is one thing I would recommend a change to this document that we put in here. Mo, can you scroll to the very end on number 6, please? At the very end, it says approval and oversight. Right here, it says final approval authority, commissioner of DOT, oversight and coordination of all these other people. AMATS is missing, or the MPOs is missing from this approval. AMATS, the MPO, should be added to approval and oversight. While the deputy or the commissioner has approval authority on the DOT end, they still need the MPO's authority to do this. They can't unilaterally do it themselves. So staff's recommendation is you add in something in there about approval by the MPO first, then you have the approval by the commissioner. So staff's recommendation is for the technical advisory committee to review this agreement, review this action, review the memo, and provide any edits or comments and recommend approval to the policy committee. I think it benefits us all in the long run to have this done. You may ask, if the state gets this August redistribution funding, will it come to the Anchorage area? Can't guarantee that. However, AMATS kind of preemptively gets a benefit from this. And a lot of it has to do with how much money we're allowed to obligate each year. Federal funding typically comes with a limitation to it, obligation authority limitation, to where you can only obligate about 90% of it, I believe. Ben, correct me if I'm wrong on that. Where you can be like, okay, we get 100 million, but you can only obligate 90 million in a year. The state works with the MPOs to allow us to obligate 100%, which means they have to take authority from somewhere else and give it to us. So when August redistribution comes around, this helps them get additional authority that they've given to us and kind of keeps the state whole. So it's all of us working together in a cooperative partnership to make sure we get the most amount of benefit out of it. So that's why staff's recommending, with the recognition that there are risks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, Ben.
Brad, I would say that while the documentation here is new, the process has existed for generations. That the department and AMATS have, it's funds management, and it's allowed us to move funds back and forth, swap things out. Whenever we get to the end of the fiscal year, it's been, I mean, for me personally, trying to balance this out, there was a lot of times that I would call Craig and we would do this. We'd follow up with a letter, memo, something, just documenting it. And I don't know if in the history of the department and this relationship that it has ever failed. And so, yes, there is risk, but I think, you know, as long as some of us are sitting here at the table, I don't think the department has ever reneged on making AMATS whole. And so I think I would say kudos to the team for actually trying to put something together that kind of formalizes this process a little bit, so it's not quite so handshaky. I don't know if that's an official word. We'll see how the minutes turn out next month. But I mean, I do support the fact that, I mean, this has been taking place for a long time, but I do support the fact that we're trying to document it and make it more official. So,
Yeah,
I just wanted to calm everyone down a little bit that, you know, there is risk, but there's risk to anything we do, but it's happened an awful lot, and usually it happens behind the scenes, and most folks don't see the funds management trade-off. And so it's,
Yeah.
as someone who's done it, it just happens, and we got to get it done. So it's a huge benefit to the state, but that benefit does trickle down to the MPO.
Yeah, I think it's great that the organization with more of the decision-making authority, the state in this case, is the one like proposing to have it more clear what they're doing. So it's almost like, yeah, in that regard, a great effort on your guys' part. So
I will clarify, I'm not assuming or saying that the state will renege on it in any way, shape, or form. I do not see that happening, as they work closely with us. It's just I have to point out that there is a risk involved. So it didn't go untalked about. No one be mad at me for something.
okay, any other questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, Tanya.
Dan with that complaint. So if we wanted to, do we have to say anything to change number 6 to encourage that it says AMATS goes first. Is that the motion to?
During the motion,
Okay.
if someone wants to, when they make the motion, just with the amendment that, you know, that it add that line. Yep, when we get there. So any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, are there any comments from the public?
There is, Adam, those are online.
Okay, go ahead, Adam. 3 minutes.
Oh, yes. Maybe not so much public. Adam Moser, Program Management Chief, author of the internal memo. So clarification there for Aaron and the committee. Number 6 item, what you are looking at there, the approval and oversight, that is intended to refer specifically to the initiation of this process within DOT&PF to ask and then move to the agreement form. And that is why AMATS, you'll notice oversight and coordination is all internal. Those are all internal positions within DOT&PF. And so this internal memo is shared just as transparency into what we are intending to have be our internal process for initiating this. Point 4 in that memo, which indicates the consultation with the MPO and the agreement, that's the agreement form that you've looked at already, that is that coordination and consent piece in agreement with the MPO. So hope just food for thought as you consider that the memorandum is purely just an internal that documents our internal process at DOT&PF for initiating, going to the MPO and saying, hey, we see this need to request to use the 200K sub-allocation funding. And that's what that's for.
Okay, thank you, Adam. You have a question?
Other than that, Aaron did a wonderful job of explaining the purpose and reason behind the request.
Thank you, Adam.
So Adam, this has been, while we've got you on the hook. So what you're saying is the internal memos, the process, the agreement, if the MPO at some point were to say, no, we don't agree with this and didn't sign off on the agreement, the transfer would not happen.
Correct. Yes. Right. Only through the sign off on that agreement form does the actual use of the MPO funding code, 200K funding code occur.
Okay. No, thanks for
And
that.
I would note this is not something specific to Alaska. This does happen nationwide between states and other MPOs as well for the same purposes.
Okay, thanks, Adam. So question for Aaron from me. Does that clarify things? Do you think it's still valuable to have some adjustments to number 6 that just clarify that?
Yeah, my recommendation maybe in number 6 is just say that this is for the internal DOT process and like put that in there because, you know, if somebody sees this later on down the line and they're not aware of it, they'll be like, oh, it just has to be approved by the commissioner and may not understand that, you know, MPO approval is subject to the agreement or something. Just something for clarification because Adam explains it, we all understand it, but 5 years from now when this is done again, somebody may not understand. So that would be my recommendation.
So having
something.
the heading for 6 where it says approval and oversight, have in parentheses after that, internal DOT&PF process.
Yes. It could be as simple as that. Just be like, okay, great. This is what they mean is this is their approval and oversight for the DOT side of things.
Would you have any opposition to that, Adam, or do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I think that's a good suggestion. We could definitely clarify that here in the title and in 6.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, what is the will of the committee?
I'll move to recommend to the policy committee. How do I even say this? To approve the sub-allocation funds agreement. Is that enough?
Modification of number 6.
Oh, with the modification of number 6, to clarify that this is an internal document for DOT, but the agreement piece is what shows the coordination with NPO.
Okay, moved by member Colhaus, seconded by member McKenna Foster. Does that give you what you need, Aaron? Clarity, okay. Any discussion? Or requests for any amendments? Okay, are there any opposed to the motion? Seeing no opposition, that motion is approved. Thank you everyone on that. Looks like that finishes our action items. Now we'll move into the remaining informational items. We already did 6A, so we'll now move to 6B. Federal fiscal year 2025 Q2 obligation report.
I'll do a quick discussion about this. See how this goes. So as we are required every quarter is to come forward with you to show you where we're at in our obligations. So as a reminder, obligations is getting the funds available to expend. So it's basically looking at this document, you have a number of columns. I'm going to draw your attentions to columns B, C, D, and E, well, and G, B onward. So B is regarding where we're currently at with the TIP. You may notice that it says TIP amendment number 2. TIP amendment number 3, while approved by the policy committee, has not been incorporated into the STIP at this point. We're still waiting for that. So until that is done, it is technically not a live TIP. So we have to use TIP amendment number 2. So when you see that, I'm going to be like, wait a minute, we made this change as part of amendment 3. That's still going through the approval process. Column C is how much we've obligated to date. You may note this is for our second quarter, so this is March 31st. So there have been some changes since then. Column D is any additional anticipated obligation, de-obligation, and then what is the total at the end, plus any remarks. So I want to draw your attention to the column C. Monk, can you go ahead and scroll down to the bottom, slowly scroll through as you look through this. You'll see that there are a lot of zeros in this column. And that is a concern because that means we have not obligated very much of our overall program as of March 31st. When you look at it, we have 54 million available. We've obligated 1.8 million as of March 31st. Now, a little additional funding has been obligated since then. Again, this is just reflecting the second quarter, so some more has been obligated. So it looks like we have 46 million left to obligate between now and the end of the fiscal year, which ends September 30th. I always mess it up. September 30th of this year. Now, before anybody freaks out and gets upset at me, I'm trying to give you a complete picture. Of that 46 million, we have about 16 million is anticipated to be fully obligated for the downtown trail connections. Everybody has been working diligently on that project, from the railroad, DOT, the Muni, AMATS. So I am ready to celebrate and take a year off once that project is obligated. So I'll see you later, guys. So that 46 million gets dropped to 30 million. Transit is helping us to obligate some additional funding, about $7 million of FY25 transit dollars. So you can reduce that a little bit more to about 33 million. And then there's a little bit more here there that has been obligated since March 31st. But it's just something to point out. We still have, 20 to $25 million left to obligate in the next, month and a half. I know everybody is working very diligently on this, but I will just kind of let you know what happened with 24. 24, the STIP was delayed as well. It didn't get approved in time to get us our TIP amendment approved. So we've been spending 25, obligating the 24 funding that wasn't obligated in 24. Just as a heads up, we may have to do the same thing in 26. It takes a while to get funds obligated, and that's just kind of the reality, not trying to be a Debbie Downer. So if you see things on here like, wait, why isn't this going to be obligated? We're going to do our best to obligate it in 26 if it doesn't make it in 25. If you scroll up to the top, Monk, or to any of the comments in the remarks. Yeah, go ahead and stop there. So you'll see in the remarks there, it says additional on the 4th one down, where the 4th Avenue signals and lighting upgrade. It says additional 6 million in FY24 programming will be obligated. So that shows that we are continuing to do obligations in 25 that were for 24. So there's a lot of complications behind that. I'll go into it if you need to, but I'm just trying to keep it simple for you all. The overall thing is we're going to be fine. Things are messy right now. I'll be honest, the STIP delay has caused some concerns on staff's end. I think everybody is working very hard at DOT and the municipality to get everything obligated. But we're in kind of a weird situation right now. So the next quarter, next obligation report may look interesting as well, depending on if the TIP Amendment 3 will not have been approved for that quarter either. So we'll have some adjustments depending on what the obligation report looks. So you may see a very large number at the bottom that says, we're not going to get all that funding obligated. Depending on when TIP Amendment number 3 gets final approved as part of the STIP, we'll see how much will actually get obligated this fiscal year or not. At this point, no funds are anticipated to lapse. We do have some funds that were in danger of lapsing, but the downtown trail connection will take care of those. Yay. So again, that project is amazing. And we will keep working on this, but I want to bring this to your attention that there are delays happening with AMATS projects that are causing impacts to getting our funds obligated every fiscal year. And it's been slowly growing over time, which is why we had 20 some odd million dollars in carry forward that we had to account for as part of TIP Amendment number 3. So just something to keep in mind as we're moving forward on projects. And before anybody upset, this is not accounting for any of the recent stuff that the policy committee has pulled back and said, make this a bigger project. That all still has to be done as part of TIP Amendment 3. This was before TIP Amendment number 3 made those changes. So just want to keep you all in the loop on what's going on with our funding. There is some positivity, so I'm keeping a smile on as we go forward, as we're keeping our jobs happening. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, Daniel.
I don't fully understand this honestly, but how does the federal government look at if there's several years of not obligating enough? Is that sort of does it stack up over time, and is there any sort of consequence of that? Or is it just you keep carrying it forward?
I'm going to try this answer, and DT can correct me if I'm wrong. So for AMATS, I think a lot of it gets down to making sure that our obligation balance is not too high, because that can impact August redistribution amounts. For the state, I believe it is dependent upon the state's allocation that comes in is dependent upon an average of how much they've obligated each year of federal dollars. So if there are years where they don't obligate as much, and that kind of compounds as time goes on, it can reduce the amount of federal funding that comes into the state. So, answer your question, it's imperative that we get our funds obligated on time for everybody. Now, are we at risk at lapsing things? No, because technically federal funds that we receive have a 1+3. So the year that you receive them and 3 years after is how long you have to obligate the funds. So that's why it seems like, wow, things are really flexible. What's going on here? I thought we had to do it in the year. We do that a lot for accounting purposes. We want it to be done in the year that we're giving to it so we can call it good and we don't have these big balances carrying over from year to year. Because the problem that comes in is when you have the big balances carrying over from year to years, you need to make sure you have the obligation authority available. And if your previous year's obligation authority got used up on something else, you may not have it available for the next year for that funding. Did I get that?
Clear as mud.
I know it's a lot, I'm sorry, but this is what we do as staff behind the scenes, and I think it's important for you all to be aware of kind of how the process works. It is complicated.
Did you have a comment, Bart?
Oh, I did. Comforting that Aaron says not to worry, so I trust that. I just had a question, since this was the second quarter, ended in March, and we're now done with the third quarter. Is it typical to get these so late? And then what do we do with this now that the third quarter is already done?
Well, before James fields it, part of it is unfortunately on me. We did take a month off in May. So we had the month of May not available to bring this forward to you all. However, I would like to turn it over to James with DOT to provide more information.
Thanks. James Starks at DOT Planning and author of this report. Yeah, as Aaron said, you know, I start filling in all of these blanks as soon as the order is ended. So I was spending April working on it and then submitted it for review to Aaron and staff. We didn't have a May meeting. See, of course, here in June. June 30th just passed us, so I have the opportunity to provide you with a third quarter report, which I would like to put myself on the hook for providing at the next month's meeting. So we're going to quickly follow this up with a third quarter obligation report. And something to keep in mind when that one comes out is that, as we just mentioned, we are still operating under Amendment 2. So all of the additional anticipated obligations, the obligations of column D, some of those may not be administratively possible because we're working under Amendment 2 and not Amendment 3, which adjusts to accommodate those needs of column D. So while we will be able to show progress, if what you see in column D doesn't match what you see in column B, that's not going to be happening in this next report. So it's not that.
And to speak to your question, what do you do with it? In a normal cycle where things are approved in a timely manner, we would be able to respond to that with like an admin mod and say, hey, we need to change this because it meets the threshold there. If it was an amendment, we had our shot with an amendment and had to do it. But because things are complicated now and there's a little bit of delay in the process, we are not able to respond to these needs as quickly as possible. So once the TIP amendment gets approved, is done, and if there is a strategic need to make a change before the end of the fiscal year, based on what we see in the OB reports, we'll at least have August if the TIP is approved in July. But I believe the STIP just got sent down to FHWA July 1st, and they typically have 30 days to review.
Yeah, I would throw out just some additional information. So we're in the last push of obligating funding here for this calendar year or this fiscal year. And so we've got details on each one of these obligations that we're actively tracking. When it comes to the stuff that's either dependent on the TIP or the STIP amendment that's still in process, we're getting those PDAs or those funding requests queued up right now so that those things, once the TIP amendment goes live, we can it's already as far along in the system as it can be, so that it's a shorter processing time there. So, yeah, we got a lot of folks working real hard to make sure we're obligating everything that we've got, or can obligate here this year. And AMATS, I think, is our highest priority right now in terms of remaining obligations, color money that we're talking about, this type of funding.
So if I can clarify what I think I heard is, typically in a year, we would want to get to zero and we would do admin mods and we would make sure, but because of the issues with the STIP, we're not really working towards that. We're just saying this money will be available to us next year as well, right? And then what kind of assurances do we have for that?
I think we're trying to get to zero as much as possible. Anything that doesn't make it this year will be available to us next year. The state has been very good at doing that, making it available.
It's one of those handshakey agreements.
Yeah. Well, this funding is limited. They cannot use it anywhere else but here within the MPO boundary.
Yeah.
So it's not like they can be like, oh, you didn't get it, we're going to take it and put it out in Fairbanks or something. So there is that close coordination between the organizations to make sure it gets it done. So if we don't get it this year, typically it's made available to us in the following year because it's still our money.
Other questions or comments? Go ahead, Daniel.
This is a really simple question, and I'm just wondering does anybody have any idea when the TIP, the first one might be done? Is there any timeline, or is that just sort of?
So the STIP, it has to be incorporated into the STIP. The STIP got sent to FHWA FTA yesterday. No, the first. Yeah. Sorry, times quickly. The first. So FHWA FTA, I believe, have 30 days to review it. They can take less than that if they want to. They can. It's up to them. I can't speak for them on that. But I think it's minimum 30 days that they have to review it. And then, we don't know. So it could be in the next couple of weeks, it could be the end of July, it could be sometime in August. Last year, the STIP was delayed until August, and we didn't have enough time to obligate everything in that current fiscal year. So you probably see something similar this year.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Any other questions or comments? Okay, are there any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, and I don't, my laptop, like, I lost battery, so I can't see anything online. Nobody online? Okay. So there's no action items on this. So with that, we'll move on to the next item. 6C, the project status update report.
Yes, real quick, we're running out of time, but I just want to keep it quick. James does this, and so this goes hand in hand with the application report to let you know kind of where projects are at. So this is, where the projects are at through March 31st. So again, this last quarter, some changes have happened since then. You'll see it in the next status report. Maybe next month. We'll see how it goes. Again, I was delayed in getting this back to James, so blame me. And this is just to give you and the public some information on where we're at projects and who to contact if you have any questions. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
I should say, thank you, James, for your work on this one. It's really appreciated.
Thanks so much. It is definitely very helpful. Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, any comments from the public? Go ahead, James.
James Stark, DOT. I just wanted to mention, I don't believe this is the case. I believe this is the first quarterly project update report that I have drafted that included not only the AMATS allocated projects, but also the HSIP projects, the NHS projects, are also included in this document. I was looking to give you a fuller understanding of all of the projects funded through the TIP and managed by DOT and AMATS. So it's a little bit, there's a few more projects shown in there because of that.
Okay, thank you, James. Appreciate the work on that. Other comments from the public? Anybody online? Nobody online? Okay. Thank you. With that, we will move to information item 6D, next TAC meeting overview.
Yes, August. So primary item that we're gonna have on there is the 2025 Public Participation Plan comments. So this will be us coming to you with all the comments we got from the public, any changes we're making to the PPP update and asking for approval of that document. So pretty excited because we have the MTP starting soon. So it'd be really nice to have the PPP in place for that. Some informational items, potentially Fireweed Lane rehab update. I have to check with them because we pushed it back a couple of months. So I'm going to check with them again to see if they want to come and give an update to the TAC and PC. And then we'll have a discussion about the Safe Roads Initiative from US DOT. So they just pushed out this new initiative, and it's called the Safe Roads, which is safe arterials for everyone through reliable operations and distraction reducing strategies. So the idea behind this is we'll have more discussion at the August meeting, so you kind of know what's going on. I have an email I'll send to you so you can read through the email that came from USDOT. So look forward to a fun discussion then. And I think that's all we have. Thank you. Okay. Oh, the high crash network map will come for action, depending on what happens at the policy committee.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Aaron. Any questions or comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Sorry about that, Steve.
No. This is my last official act as a municipal employee.
Oh, wow.
So it's my last meeting. Go on 5 days of non-casual leave and then retired.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, well, we'll miss you.
Oh, contain your enthusiasm, please. No, I've been doing this for 18 years. Coming. It's been seen quite a bit of change as a consequence of that, and quite a few face changes as well. In fact, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for Bart.
I haven't been here 18 years.
He used to sit on the other side, he used to sit on the other side of the table. But no, I've enjoyed this. You know, we are, the ports don't have a dog in a fight when it comes to DOT. You know, we get no formula money from DOT, so you know, the only federal money we get is grants. But there's a lot of important stuff that goes on in this, you know, goes on in this room, that goes on in DOT that affects our livelihood and our ability to stay efficient and stay open for business. So it's good to keep your fingers on the pulse of that. So thanks for all the collaboration. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm rooting for you. From the wings.
Yeah.
Awesome. We definitely appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing who comes in your steps to carry on the tradition.
Yep. Your guess is as good as mine right now.
Sounds good.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Steve, for the years of knowing you. I know that, you know, sometimes we struggled on how to help the port. So I appreciate you pushing, be like, wait, can we do this? Can we do that? Trying to get things done. So you've contributed a lot. So thank you for everything over the years. And from me, I wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It's exciting.
Yep, for sure. So we'll jump back to 6D real quick. Are there any comments from the public on that item? You're good? Okay, I thought James like indicating like you might, but that's good. Okay, so so that gets us through, I guess, 6D. And so we already started into the 7 with committee comments. Are there any other comments from committee members? Item 7 agenda. Any updates to provide? Go ahead, Melinda.
Last meeting, I failed to recognize Tanya Hickok, who's our new project manager. And she came from Parks and Rec, and she's working at PM&E, and we are building our team to help work on our federal funded projects. So we're really excited to have her, and thank you so much, Shanna. Being so cooperative, and she is still working on, I think, the downtown trail connection. So we're excited about that work that she's completing for Parks. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Melinda. Other comments from committee members? One that I'll add is that Neighborhood Greenways initiative is going well. If you haven't yet, go ride your bike down N Street between the Chester Creek Trail and downtown, and you'll see some Neighborhood Greenway signage. And also on Patterson Street, those ones are almost all the way in as well. And we'll be having additional ones signed in the future. We do have sharrows or shared lane markings on the roads and most of those Neighborhood Greenways. So excited to see that rolling out this summer. And then the other thing I'll add is that July 4th is typically the highest crash day of the year nationally. So please, everyone, be safe tomorrow on the roads, whatever user type you are, so that we can address the best that we can some of the crashes that we've been having here in this area. Those are the items I have. Any other comments from committee members? Okay, are there any comments from the public? Any members of the public who'd like to provide some comments?
Nobody else will. I will real quick. I think I need to add a staff one on here because we often have stuff. I just wanted to give you a quick update on where we're at with the ETIP. We just had a demonstration from one of the vendors that we're looking at on the software that they provide for MPOs and their management of their transportation improvement program. So very excited to try and get some more information and then go through the process to see who we want to select for that. So I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that maybe by the end of this year, the latest, we have a software in place that we can start utilizing. It probably won't be in place for this current TIP, the 27 through 30, but it may be, you know, in place for us to kind of migrate there after the 27 through 30 is approved. So we're working diligently. We're very excited for some of the opportunities that will allow for integration with public participation and helping to seamlessly integrate the management of the TIP behind the scenes. So we'll keep you updated as we find out more and who we end up selecting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Any other comments from the public? No one online, so with that, we'll move to adjournment. Adjourned?
Move.
Okay,
Second.
or should we let Steve motion?
Oh, yeah.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned, 2:50.
Oh.